You decide that you need to leave your country, whether that be because of war, famine, poverty, or persecution. It doesn't matter. What matters is you, and your family is safe, in a country with wealth, freedom, and opportunity. There are many countries to choose from, but you choose the UK, for you speak English, and you may have friends there already that text you about how welcoming everyone is, and how well they've settled in. So you travel, thousands of miles. You've spent practically all your savings, and you and your family are knackered. But you're here, finally. You've made it to Calais. Just a short boat journey, and you're in the UK. You've heard of the risks, you've heard of the stories, but it doesn't faze you, for it is the only way. You pay thousands of euros to a people smuggler, so you and your family can sit in a small dinghy boat and cross the busiest naval route in the world. You and your family set off, and now you're in fate's hands. Whether you make it to the beaches of Dover and claim asylum, perhaps even make the UK your home like those friends of yours, or instead, you drown in the cold waters of the Channel, like the thousands before. This is the reality of many migrants trying to cross the Channel, and this is what the migrant crisis is all about. We've all heard the stories of migrants drowning. It's far too common. But that begs the question as of why. Why put your life and your family's life in the hands of a group of people who don't have your best interests at heart? And despite all the risks, why has the number of migrants choosing to cross the Channel gone up? It's the only way. The Home Secretary may list many different schemes in plans, which we'll explore in a bit, but they're often ineffective, take too long, or overly complicated and bureaucratic. Therefore, taking a boat is the best option. There was another way to get to the UK, and that was through lorries. Human traffickers, or just lorry drivers who wanted some extra cash, would keep migrants in the back of a lorry up until their destination, where they'd be let out, and then they could claim asylum. Often they'd be packed in there like sardines. Lorries aren't ventilated at all, so many people in the back of lorries died from a lack of oxygen. This has now been clamped down upon. Lorries now have routine checks with heat sensors so that no person is in the back of a lorry. This didn't stop the migrants trying to get to the UK, and only drove more to the crossings. So what could have caused this? What would have made people choose to do something so risky? The current migrant crisis is a hangover from the instability that swept much of the Middle East and North Africa in the 2010s. You may remember a similar migrant crisis that happened in 2015, when many migrants, mainly from Libya, Iraq and Syria, fled to Europe following civil wars that erupted in those countries, and many travelled through Europe, arrived in northern France, and tried to cross the Channel. Although this time around, the makeup of the migrants crossing the Channel is different. Over half of the migrants come from Albania, Afghanistan, and Iran. Afghans and Iranians are fleeing brutal regimes. In 2021, the Afghan militant group, the Taliban, took over the country following the Western-supported Afghan army and government's collapse, leading to that infamous evacuation. The current Iranian regime is currently facing significant instability following the murder of Mahsa Amini and the attempted cover-up by the Iranian government.
The reason for fleeing for both countries doesn't seem too dissimilar to what had been going on back in 2015. The major difference comes from the number of Albanians seeking asylum. Albanians have been seeking asylum to seek out better economic opportunities. Despite strong growth in 2021, the Albanian economy is facing some significant challenges as the war in Ukraine continues to affect prices and growth. This has worsened some of the longer-term consequences that has led to so many Albanians leaving, such as corruption, low pay, poor working conditions, and a low quality of life. The UK has a 20 times higher median net annual household income, and Albania has Great Depression levels of unemployment for young people. It wouldn't be wrong to suggest that inequalities play just as much of a role as war in the current crisis. So how does the government plan to solve this crisis? Well, Rishi Sunak has promised to create a new small boats command centre which should better integrate the military and National Crime Agency, who themselves will be getting more funding. order more raids on people suspected of illegality, such as those suspected of trafficking, place up to 10,000 migrants in disused university halls and holiday parks to save money on hotel costs as the migrants are being processed, and finally abolish the backlog by the end of 2023. This is a similar approach to how they approached the lorry smugglers, which I said earlier has been eradicated. This approach has been criticised by Alex Fraser, the director of refugee support for the British Red Cross, saying that people take this perilous journey because there is no other option, there is no other route. Fraser is right that there is a lack of legal gateways for migrants to take. When Home Secretary Suella Braverman was questioned by the House of Lords Committee, she had no answer to the question about other possible legal routes, practically acknowledging that taking the risky journey was the only option for these migrants. Braverman has talked a lot about the huge backlog of migrant applications. The BBC reported over 100,000 applicants are still waiting to be approved or rejected. The main reason for this is the system just takes too long. When the applicant claims asylum, there is an interview process. There will be some bureaucracy, and when that's all checked over, the applicant will either be rejected or be able to apply to remain in the UK. The process should take up to 6 months, but 70% of applicants don't hear back in that time. During the process, they are kept in hotels, where they cannot work and must live off funding by the government. Probably the most well-known and most dubious proposal has been the Rwanda scheme. In April of 2022, the UK and Rwanda signed an agreement that the UK can send asylum seekers to Rwanda. The thinking behind it was, people who seek asylum via routes such as the Channel crossing will be processed and settled in Rwanda, with no chance of settlement in the UK. This agreement has been heavily criticised as it seems to break international law. Under Article 32 of the 1951 UN Convention and the 1967 UN Protocol relating to the status of refugees, the contracting states shall not expel a refugee lawfully in their territory, save on grounds of national security or public order. Sending an asylum seeker, and in the agreement it specifically says those who are crossing the Channel, to Rwanda, does seem to sound a lot like a breach of this article. However, the British High Court has ruled it to be legal, but as of recording, no planes have taken off. To resort to such illegal actions, like breaking international law, just shows how desperate the government is to deal with this crisis. So let's throw them a bone and explore some ways which experts have suggested to better tackle this crisis. I think a good place to start is to see what Amnesty International suggests. They're an NGO which focuses on fighting inequality and injustices. They have done some inspiring work to help people around the world stay safe and have access to the basic necessities. They recommend a transnational approach. Borders should be open to everyone regardless of if you have paperwork or not, as well as more cooperation between countries to tackle this issue. I doubt this approach would be very popular. A key reason why Britain left the EU was to cut down on immigration. Taking this approach seems like a death sentence electorally for the Conservatives. Perhaps they prefer Simon Jenkins's proposal to give migrants work visas, so they can fill jobs where there is currently a shortage, killing two birds with one stone. While I like this idea, there's no doubt that there will be some unforeseen consequences, such as a resurgence of the far right as a reaction to this. Well, what does Labour suggest? It might be worth going with what they suggest. Well, Labour have been vague about what they would do instead. What they have suggested is a complete overhaul of the system, a criminal crackdown on smuggling gangs, something that the Conservatives are already doing, but it is good that there is bipartisan support on that, and scrapping the Rwanda scheme. So whatever solution they take, it's going to have some spanners in the works. I think there is no doubt that leaving your country because of war, famine, poverty, or persecution is something we can all empathise with. The perfect way to prevent these crossings from happening is to make the world safe, secure, and prosperous. That's not going to happen anytime soon, and perhaps never will. The world is a cruel, cruel place. I do believe a solution will be found. I just hope it comes from a place of empathy and not hate. I'm sure a lot of you may have been wondering why I've not addressed the blatant xenophobia that engulfs this issue. And that's because I think most of the xenophobia is self-evident. It does seem like the approaches the government takes and discussions many in the public have come from a place of xenophobia, or with the intent of pandering to a xenophobic group. That's wrong, and I don't think I need to justify why. The solutions that we need to take must consider the lives of those who want to get to the UK, even if those conversations may be uncomfortable. I am very hopeful it can be dealt with, but I guess we will just have to wait and see. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This will be the start of a series which aims to understand key political issues in the UK, so you can let me know what you'd like to see in the comments. The reference list is in the description, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.